Welcome everybody to this evening's event, Relational Depth, an author's perspective interview with Mick Cooper. Mick, welcome to our event today.
Hey John. Hey John.
Because we're all online, maybe I could ask you first of all, whereabouts in the world are you located?
Up in Glasgow, sitting in my office in Glasgow. University of Strathclyde, just out in the west coast.
Looks good. Looks like you've got lots of books there.
Lots of it. It's still a bit rainy, or it's just about to, I think, as is the way in Glasgow.
Yeah. Welcome to Scotland, eh? Yeah.
Still getting used to it.
Yeah, so well, maybe you could give us a sense of your professional journey up to here, Mick. I guess you haven't always been in Glasgow.
No. So I was down in Brighton, University of Brighton. I trained initially. I did a year in a certificate in counselling, person centred at City University, and loved it in many ways. But the large group, the frustrations of the large group got the better of me. So I moved on to existential training for 4 years down at Regent's College. And then while I was doing that, I started working as a lecturer in counselling at the University of Brighton. In 2003, just beginning of the year, we moved up to Glasgow there was a job with Dave Meehan, so I came up here to work with my family.
And you've been in Glasgow ever since?
I've been in Glasgow since 8 years now, 8.5 years.
Wow, how time passes. So once Dave got a hold of you, there's no turning back. So I guess we're here to talk about your book that you co-authored with Dave Meehan's, Relational Depth. Maybe you could give us an idea of what the process was behind the book. What got you interested in writing about relational depth?
Well, I think for me, I've always been interested in this thing about contact and what it means to really engage with somebody. And you know, what does it mean to have a meaningful, in-depth conversation, a dialogue? I think like many people in my life, I've experienced that sense of something very special that happens when two people are very engaged and connected with each other. And there's some unique quality to that engagement that feels very different from another kind of conversation, which feels more perhaps on the surface, more superficial. And I guess for myself, I was always somebody who found those kind of chats fairly difficult, kind of small talk. I never particularly liked small talk, and preferred the kind of more engaged conversation. So I think it was something I was always interested in. And I guess counselling, when I was doing counselling, I had a sense that in the counselling work also there was differences in the quality of communication, and that some of the engagements I had felt very deep, and there was a meeting, some kind of quality of meeting, and it felt like when there was that quality of meeting, almost whatever we were talking about, to be honest, it felt like it was a good session, and it felt like something important was happening. So I was very interested in that, and then I did more reading about a philosopher called Martin Buber, who I was really interested in his work, and writes about the I-thou attitude and writes about dialogue. And having found that really interesting, and then been interested in that area when Dave, I think just before I was coming up, Dave had been mentioned to Dave that some of the academics around the country would like to know more about relational depth, and he'd been thinking about writing this book for a number of years. And I said, maybe we could do something together. And it kind of happened from there.
Mm-hmm.
So shall I tell you? Yeah. No, I was just going to say. So I say it sounds like it happens from there. There was quite a lot more to it. I mean, Dave's a fantastic writer, but one of the interesting things working with him, I think, and often this doesn't become apparent until you've kind of worked through something more, is that we came to it from kind of different angles. So I think Dave came to it more from a kind of person-centered perspective, more about the core conditions and what it means to articulate the core conditions in a one-er, to meet somebody in depth with all the core conditions. I guess I came to it more from the question about what are these moments of dialogue and what does it mean to have a dialogue, less in kind of reference to the core conditions and more perhaps in relation to some of the existential literature.
Yeah.
What it means is that one of the things you can see in the book is that some of it is more focused on moments of meeting, which is more my thing, and then Dave's stuff is more focused on providing a relationship in which there can be relational depth as a kind of quality of the relationship rather than as specific moments.
Yeah, so there's those two perspectives in the book, and it sounds like for you it's come from a real personal experience in terms of what it's like to engage, and a professional experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is, I guess with all books, it is a very personal thing, and it's a personal, I think, both pleasure and questioning about this experience of dialogue. And, I mean, it's something that I'm still studying, and I'm still working with colleagues around to try and develop an understanding of what does it mean to dialogue. And it's a very personal question because it's something that I experience so powerfully. But in terms of how you understand it, how you conceptualize it, I don't know. It's an open question, really.
Well, maybe for you and Dave, it was a slightly different experience in how you conceptualize it. That Dave was coming at it from the wholeness of the relationship, but you're looking at the parts of it. Is that?
I wouldn't say it was. I think one was more longitudinal and one was in the moment. So I think we were both looking at it as a whole, but I think I was looking at it more phenomenologically, in the sense of really trying to understand those moments, quite kind of short, brief moments of connection. And I think Dave was looking at the kind of relationship that where there is a kind of a connectedness throughout across the relationship. But I think we also can, I mean in a way Dave's approach is perhaps more related to counselling practice and what counsellors might do. He was saying, how can we create a relationship which really kind of where clients feel very held and feel very safe and feel able to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And I think he was coming at it a bit more from the kind of therapist perspective in terms of what therapists can do. I think I was almost more interested in it psychologically, in terms of perhaps less, what is it that therapists, how can they improve their practice? And I was more interested in the kind of psychology or the phenomenology of these moments of encounter and asking that kind of question. So I think Dave's was more kind of practically relevant. I think my angle was more perhaps of a philosophical, psychological question.
Like what's it like for the human? What goes on for the human in those moments of connection?
Yeah, what goes on for the human? What are they like is one question. And then there's other questions around what facilitates those moments of connections. Something we're talking about is at the moment is kind of, what would be a nice word, like something like maybe dialogenic. Like what are the factors that lead to us, like us here and now? Like what would make our conversation a dialogue rather than not a dialogue? Like what do I need to do? Like for instance, from the work that we've done, my sense is that if I'm being quite kind of honest about myself and talking about my experiences, then that becomes more of a dialogue. Perhaps also if I'm at the edge, if I'm telling you something, John, that I've told, people loads of times before, and this is just a kind of rehearsed conversation, it probably loses a dialogic quality. Whereas if it's something about we're both at the edge of our awareness in terms of where we're going, that there's a spontaneity. I think there's something about that that's important in dialogue as well. But, these are all open questions.
Yeah. So